Next morning, we're taking a taxi downtown into the Loop, where we're going to enjoy a walking tour of the historic buildings of the city. And we'll also show you a little bit of a second walking tour that highlights some of the modern architecture of Chicago.
Okay. This is Chicago Architecture Foundation. This is the shop and tour center. We sell books, gifts, architectural related. We give 65 different tours to people throughout Chicago, throughout the world, every day. We have walking tours focusing on what we call early skyscrapers, older buildings in Chicago, the Chicago School of Architecture, walking tours on modern architecture.
This morning we're doing the historic tour. This is architecture in Chicago from about the 1880s to the 1920s, 30s. Chicagoans refer to the downtown part of Chicago as the Loop. And originally there were cable cars that literally looped the downtown section, and they were replaced by these L structures. It was completed in 1897, by the way, and it's copies bridge construction. But first we're going to talk about the Rookery building, which is right here, built in 1886 by Burnham and Root. It's got a magnificent lobby. Let's cross over and look at it. And here are the rooks on both sides. You can even think of this as a bird cage if you want to follow the rook theme through, or a Parisian train station. But this was done in 1886, and then in 1905, Frank Lloyd Wright was asked to redo the lobby. Now, Wright brought this white marble in, incised in gold, and the railings right above it, that geometric design is Wright's. The light fixtures, again, very rectangular, flat, geometric, that's Wright's. And those flower urns are signatures of Frank Lloyd Wright. His prairie homes, almost all of them, had these two flower urns in front of the building. But look at that magnificent oriel staircase. That's all wrought and cast iron and glass enclosed all the way to the top. I'd like to walk up to the second floor with you so we can see above the skylight, and you can see the light court and get some feel for that beautifully designed stairwell. Look straight up. And this building was almost on the verge of being torn down. Yeah. The Continental Bank bought it to restore it, and then they had financial problems, so they gave up on it, and they were to tear it down, and then it was saved at the last minute. This building gives the lie to the approach the developers take, where they say you can't restore an old building, it isn't financially viable. You must tear it down and start again. But here they just gutted everything and brought it back to its original state. The Manhattan building, which is the corner building, that, like all those buildings being built at the time, each one when it was completed was the tallest building in the city. But it's now a residential loft building. They converted it from an office building to residential lofts. But notice how he's bayed the windows, and some are rounded bays and some are angular bays. And that was the tallest building in the city at the time. This is the Marquette building. It's considered the most highly evolved of the Chicago School of Architecture. It's 1894, Halliburton Roche, and it's 17 stories. But here again, the pilasters and the horizontals, the spandrels, delineate the skeleton of the building. And another important feature of the Chicago School of Architecture is called the Chicago window, which you can see on this building. Notice, especially on the second level, that wide expanse of glass is fixed. It doesn't move. And on the two ends, it's double hung, so you can open and close that. So you get as much light exposure as possible, and also you can open the windows to get some ventilation. Because again, these were not air conditioned at the time. And that window was developed here along with the Chicago School, and you'll see it on many of these older buildings. wonderful plaza, which is the Federal Center. This is all Mies van der Rohe, but he sited these buildings and had Marquette building in mind to create this plaza just by the siting of these buildings.
We finished our historic walking tour and then jumped ahead several decades and listened in for a few minutes on the contemporary architecture walking tour.
We're going to look at the Federal Center, which is really on three sides. On this side, you have the post office. On this side, you have offices, and on this building is the federal courthouse. Anyone have any idea who the architect is of the Federal Center? Mies van der Rohe. He came from Germany in the mid-30s, and he really changed the look of Chicago and many other cities because he had specific ideas about the way a building should look. And as you can see, all the columns, everything is really devoid of any detail, and yet there is ornamentation in these three buildings. The ornamentation is the glass that reflects the movement of the city. By the way, the stable here is, as I said, by Alexander Calder, and it's called Flamingo. It's a red painted freeform, and it's in stark contrast, of course, to the disciplined sophistication of the rest of the Federal Center. We're going to see a lot of other plazas on our tour, and you'll get to compare them and decide what you like and why it is that you like it that way.
We'll see a bit more of the walking tour at the end of the hour, but for now, it's starting to snow. We've had an added bonus on our visit to Chicago. Today is the first day of winter, and as you can see, it's all getting white out here. Looks like there's going to be a white Christmas in Chicago. It's kind of fun when you can just enjoy this for a day or a half a day and then hop on the plane and go back to Hawaii and hit the beach again and warm up. So this is not bad at all. This is a great bonus in our trip here in Chicago. We're heading for a white Christmas. Even the lion in front of the Art Institute gets in the holiday spirit here in Chicago. This is one of the best museums in the country, particularly if you're a fan of Impressionist painters. Even though it's snowing, it doesn't really feel that cold. So don't let this kind of weather keep you from enjoying the Midwest in the wintertime, particularly Chicago at Christmas. It might look cold to you, but to Chicagoans, this is a relatively mild day. And then a few weeks later, it got cold in earnest. January and February are the coldest months of the year in Chicago, and it can go down to 0 for weeks at a time and can be very windy. But if you're lucky in the wintertime, you'll find a lovely day like this with beautiful snow and a terrific atmosphere, nice clean air to go with it. Really made our day. We're walking to the Art Museum, the Art Institute of Chicago, but when we saw this delightful snow flurry, we decided to hang out in the streets for a while and enjoy the season. A white Christmas for us. So we're going to take a little stroll in the nearby streets. There's the Chicago L. It's the subway and elevated train system, a terrific mass transit system with buses included that links all the different neighborhoods of Chicago together, particularly down here in the Loop, which gets its name from the elevated train that makes a loop circuit around the central part of the old downtown. Once you're in the downtown area, it's really quite easy to walk from one attraction to another, or you can take a taxi if you're going to be heading back up to North Michigan Avenue. Those are the two basic parts of town for the visitor, the Loop and Michigan Avenue. And the Art Institute of Chicago, founded back in the 1890s by some wealthy benefactors in the city. It has one of the best collections of French Impressionist art any place in the world. However, video cameras are not allowed inside, unfortunately. That means you'll just have to go there for yourself and see with your own eyes how beautiful the art collection is. We can take you inside the Field Museum of Natural History. This has a great collection of cultural artifacts as well as natural history. We're here in Chicago's Field Museum. It's one of the best museums of its type in the country. They're very strong on exhibits of mammals and birds of North America, and they have a great collection of culture history of the American Indians, and there's a fine Egyptian collection here also in Chicago's Field Museum. It's one of the top sites in Chicago for museum lovers, along with the Art Institute, of course, and the Museum of Science. You want to come to the Field Museum. They have these exciting dioramas with animals mounted in their natural habitat, and they have a vast gem collection and lots of carvings and statues from ethnic peoples all over the world. And Joe Moore. We were quite surprised to turn a corner and run into Joe Moore with the evening news. It turns out this was a special Hawaii exhibit. Islands in Paradise. Volcanoes and beaches and endangered species. A map of Oahu. The Nene. It really made us feel right at home. After all, Hawaii is famous all over the world, and particularly with the explosive, destructive power of the volcanic eruptions that have been happening on an ongoing basis here. They have a vast collection of Native American artifacts and all the diversity of the North American cultures and South American cultures. Here's a Haida village with tall totem poles and ceremonial axes and stone adzes, beautifully carved in the Northwest Coast Indian style of the Haida and the Tlingit. See the familiar totem pole faces, and the Field Museum has the largest collection of Peruvian pottery anywhere in North America, representative of the Mochica and the Chimu styles of prehistoric Peruvian pottery that depicts a lot of the rituals and a lot of the lifestyle of the people of the time. As that culture left no written record, the pottery becomes a very important clue for the archaeologists and the culture historians to figure out how the people lived. As well as the wooden totem poles and the wooden face masks tell a lot about the culture of the day. Little reproductions of teepee villages, and you can see the authentic clothing that the Indians wore. Dresses made of deerskin, and a small model of a cliff dwelling. These are typical prehistoric apartment dwellings of the Anasazi of the southwest of America.
Yep, just like us.
Along with their pottery. And there's artifacts from Oceania and from Africa as well. The grand lobby makes a very impressive entryway, and from the lobby you can go off into the other various exhibits. One of the most popular is the gemstones. Here you'll find a model of the Hope Diamond, and you'll also find the 6,000 carat blue topaz Chalmers stone, and there's a Chinese jade exhibit just across the hallway as well. The Field Museum is open every day of the week from 9 till 5, and it costs $5 to get in, unless you come on a Thursday, in which case it's free. And you can wander through these different animal dioramas. They have exotic species from all four corners of the world. It's a great treat for school kids, and it's also very educational and entertaining for adults as well. See why the tigers have stripes getting lost in the grass there. Gibbons swinging from the branches, mountain goats, deer. It's almost just like being there. You can let your imagination run wild. And then you can walk into the pyramid. They have a fantastic Egyptian collection with mummies in the basement and a reconstruction with genuine stones of an Egyptian tomb lined with original hieroglyphics. It's a reconstruction of the tomb of King Unis Ankh, who was the last pharaoh of the 5th dynasty around 2500 BC. Back into the great hallway once again, you see the stuffed elephant and the huge dinosaur skeleton that forms a portal from which you can enter and, in this case, leave. We're on our way now, after this brief taste of the Field Museum, back into downtown Chicago.